Buongiorno ragazzi and welcome to a new Italian 101 video. Today's topic is quite simple. After the last one, it's I verbi in ere or ere verbs. I hope you remember that we studied one group of regular verbs. Regular verbs are, of course, those that follow a conjugation pattern. And we studied the are verbs. We said that there were three of those: are, ere, and ire verbs. So today we are going to study the second one of those groups. It includes verbs like correre, which means to run, prendere, which means to take, or scrivere, which means to write. As you can see, it includes a few very useful verbs. So these are regular, right? So they follow a conjugation pattern. Luckily, the pattern that they follow is a lot like the one we learned for are verbs. So let's see how it works. We start with the infinitive. Of course, as you guys know, the infinitive is the form of the verb that ends in are, ere, or ire. In this case, of course, it will end in ere. The example we are going to use is scrivere, which again means to write, right? So what is the first step? Exactly the same as the one we learned for the are verbs. We get rid of the last three letters of the infinitive, in this case ERE, or the ere ending. And what we're left with is known as the stem of the verb. So obtaining the stem is always the same, independently of what group the verb belongs to. We only get rid of the ending, the last three letters, right? And then, of course, afterwards we need to add some endings so that we get our conjugation, right? And these are the ere endings. The io ending is o, the tu ending is I, the lui lei ending is e, the noi ending is iamo, the voi ending is ete, and the loro ending is ono. So for the final step, I just put those endings after the stem in order to get my personal conjugation forms, right? Io scrivo, I write. Tu scrive, you write. Lui scrive, he writes. Lei scrive, she writes. Noi scriviamo, we write. Voi scrivete, you guys write. Loro scrivono, they write. So it's quite simple and very similar to the pattern we learned for are verbs, right? Where is the difference? I hope you noticed that it is in the endings. Let's go back a little and look at the are endings. They go like this: o, I, a, iamo, ate, ano. And now let's compare them to the ere endings. Here they are: o, I, e, iamo, ete, ono. So if you look at these two little tables carefully, you will notice that they are quite similar, right? In fact, there are three endings that are the same. The io ending stays the same, it's o. The tu ending also stays the same, it's I. And the noi ending is still iamo. So that means we have only three endings that change, right? The lui, lei ending is a for are verbs and e for ere verbs. The voi ending is ate for are verbs and ete for ere verbs. And finally, the loro ending is ano for are verbs and ono for ere verbs, which means that if you already learned the full set of 6 are endings, for this new group of regular verbs, you only need to learn 3 of them, right? The ones that change. The lui lei ending, the voi ending, and the loro ending, right? And other than that, the pattern you follow is exactly the same. So I hope that you will find this topic quite easy, right? We already know how to apply the pattern. We are only introducing a very minor change in three of the six endings. So let's look at a couple examples of ere verbs that are not scrivere. Two very important verbs as well. Ridere means to laugh, right? So to laugh, sorry. So how do I conjugate ridere? Well, I get rid of the ere ending and I just add the ere ending. So io rido, I laugh. Tu ridi, you laugh. Lui ride, he laughs. Lei ride, she laughs. Noi ridiamo, we laugh. Voi ridete, you guys laugh. Loro ridono, they laugh. Hmm? Another very important verb in ere, vivere, to live. So io vivo, I live. Tu vivi, you live. Lui vive, he lives. Lei vive, she lives. Noi viviamo, we live. Voi vivete, you guys live. Loro vivono, they live. Hmm? Again, notice that I am doing exactly the same thing that I learned to do with the yada endings. I'm just remembering that the lui lei ending is e instead of a, the voi ending is ete instead of ate, and the loro ending is ono instead of ano. Okay? Lastly, a very short list of ere verbs, of regular ere verbs, of course, that are very, very useful. Chiedere means to ask. Correre, we mentioned it already, very easy for Spanish speakers, is to run. Notice that you have to roll those R's, right? Correre. Crescere, to grow. Notice that SC is just a sh sound, right? A soft sh sound. Crescere. Decidere, to decide, quite simple. Discutere, also simple, to discuss. Dividere, to divide, in all the senses of the word, the mathematical operation, and also to divide, things or people. Mettere means to put. This can be a false friend for Spanish speakers because meter means something very different, right, in Spanish, but mettere just means to put. Prendere is to take. You can use it for, io prendo l'autobus, I take the bus, or io prendo il libro, I take the book, right? So, in all the same ways in which you can use to take in English, you can use prendere in Italian. Ridere, we just did, means to laugh. Rispondere, to respond or to answer. Rompere, to break. Scendere, to descend or to go down, right? Scendere le scale just means to go down the stairs. Scrivere, to write. Spendere, to spend. Vedere, to see. Vivere, to live, right? Notice that there's a difference between vedere, which is to see, and guardare, which means to watch, right? Exactly the same difference that you find in English between to see and to watch. Guardare e vedere. Okay, all of these are regular ere verbs, which means that in order to conjugate them, you follow the pattern I just showed you. Lastly, please always remember that the fact that the infinitive of a verb ends in one of these three endings does not mean that they are regular. Right? In fact, all infinitives of Italian verbs, both regular and irregular, end either in are, ere, or ire. Think briefly of two examples of irregular verbs that we have studied. In fact, we have studied only two: essere, to be, and avere, to have. Well, both of those end in ere, but that does not mean that they are regular, right? In fact, they are very irregular. You do not follow the pattern in order to conjugate them. You memorize those conjugations already instead, right? So don't let this confuse you. For you to be able to use the pattern in order to conjugate a verb, you need to know that the verb is regular. Ok? Grazie ragazzi, a dopo.